Welcome to Be Evolved, a podcast for parents and educators who prioritize developing possibility and expansion within the total educational process for themselves and their children or students. We invite you to listen to the podcast with your child or student in mind and with yourself at the center of the learning experience. Ultimately, our goal is to bridge the gap between educational expertise and research, translating it into practical action. Gaining knowledge plus taking action is what it means to be evolved. Hello, everyone. This is Mary Mealy. I am so excited today for our conversation about conversations and just the connections that happen through our important conversations within education. And this is a podcast today for parents, for educators, for students, for the bus driver, for the coach, for anyone on your student's team to be able to up-level their ability to use words and connect. And today I have two exciting professionals who have come to Evolve to talk about the work. And I'm going to introduce them and their work today. And we're going to just get right into this important conversation. I hope that you learned so much today. I know I will as well. So we have today Erika Bare, who has been an educator for over 20 years. She's been serving as the superintendent in a school in Oregon. I'm going to let her explain more about herself, and then we'll hear from Tiffany Burns, who has spent 2 decades in education, and she has taught the range of students from elementary to middle and high school students. She also works as an administrator, and I'm really excited to introduce their work. You can find their book called Connecting Through Conversation, a playbook for talking with students. And we'll share all of that in the show notes, so you'll be able to get your copy as I was able to get my copy on Kindle, Amazon, wherever you get your books. So we're going to go ahead and dive into this conversation. I'm going to go ahead and let Erika introduce herself so you can hear her voice and understand who's talking a little bit. So Erika, thanks for being here today. I'm so excited to meet you. What have I missed that the audience can know about you, and what has brought you to this work?
Yes, thank you so much. So excited to be here with you this morning. Yeah, I have been an educator for a long time. I started out as a special education teacher, and so spent most of my career really supporting students with different exceptionalities and navigating pathways for parents and educators to build a team that was going to really support students through their educational journey. And that took me to a bunch of different places, but was a sped teacher for a long time, was a building administrator at high school and elementary, and then did work for a while at the district office supporting district-wide student services, special education, counseling, behavioral health, all of those pieces. And now get to lead as superintendent in a district here in Southern Oregon, which has been just an absolute joy. But perhaps more importantly, I have 2 amazing kids, 20 and 17, and a very supportive husband that has made all of this work possible. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much for introducing yourself and your work to us. And Tiffany, would you do the same for us?
Absolutely. Thanks for having us on, Mary. I'm really excited. Yeah, I've been in education also like Erika for over 20 years. I just love kids. I think they're the coolest people on the planet. And so I've taught elementary, middle, high school. I'm currently teaching university. And my husband laughs no matter what grade I'm teaching. I'm like, that's my favorite grade. I love this grade because I really just love teaching and I love kids. I started as a school administrator in 2012. So I was a principal of a K-8 outdoor magnet school. I was the assistant principal of a middle school. And then for 9 years, I was the principal of the most fantastic elementary school here in Southern Oregon. Eric and I, like you said, we wrote this book a couple years ago, and we've been traveling all over doing professional development and helping schools and districts really build these cultures of connection and really help them build these very strong relationships so that their kids are ready to learn at really high levels. And it turns out that is hard to do as a principal. And so I took a year sabbatical and have been teaching full time, working with pre-service teachers, which has just lit me up. It has been so much fun. So I'm actually going to continue doing that next year and get to continue doing this fantastic work. I'm also consulting and coaching principals on instructional work. And it's just, yeah, it's been a fun new chapter.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think it's so important to turn our practical work into greater teaching. And I think a book really does help us also to do that. And I want to dive into this book. And I would hope, since I'm sure most of our audience is very curious about reading the book, but since they probably haven't yet read it, could you give everybody kind of a top level, what are you going to get when you get into this book? What's the story? What are some of the tools that you're including? I know there's so many tools, but just top level, who wants to take that one?
I'm happy to. So, this book was really designed for very busy educators because we've not met an educator who isn't super busy. So, it's written as a playbook and it outlines some theory and then a lot of very practical, easy to implement strategies to help build connection within your classroom and how to respond to student behaviors in a way that will build connection instead of break connection. So, really thinking about how do we support student behavior? How do we support building these relationships? How do we respond when students are struggling in a way that can really transform culture in a classroom or in a school and even in a district? So it's a very practical, quick read. It's very conversational. Tiffany and I have a great time chatting with each other, and that comes through in the book. It's really a conversation that we're having with all of the amazing educators out there trying to get better at their craft. It was absolutely written for every single person who talks with kids at school. So as you mentioned in the beginning, it is for teachers, absolutely. It's for administrators, yes. It's also for our front office professionals. It's for our educational assistants. It's for bus drivers. It's for the folks in making sure our kids are fed every day. So it really is designed, all of the strategies are implementable in all of those environments. And so you can find yourself in any place in a school using these. You can also find yourself at home if you happen to have kids using the exact same strategies. So that's what we get a lot of feedback from the educators that we work with who are also parents. And they're like, yep, I used this at home with my kiddo last night and it worked. So that's kind of the high level summary of what it's all about.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Well, gosh, of course, I have so many questions, but I want to start actually with something that I feel many of our listeners may appreciate, which is a problem, a challenge, right? And then you can give us some of the ways in which you might solve this particular challenge. So let's say you're a middle school student and you go into a math class and you're sort of struggling with what is being taught. It's new. You're not really sure how to follow the lesson. You sort of look to the left, look to the right. You're hoping someone can maybe show you the first step, but you're not really so sure. And as you sort of look to the left and look to the right, the teacher notices that you're doing that. And the teacher all of a sudden jumps in and says, you can't do that. You can't look at the other students' papers. You've got to think about this yourself. You really have to think about this yourself. And that's all you're going to do. Let's just stop there. What's going on there for everybody in that story? And what are some of the ways that you might help everyone involved with some of the ideas in your book?
Yeah, so I think in that, and I think the situation that you just described is not uncommon. I think kids can be really nervous or uncomfortable, and school can be a really scary place, and Erica and I really believe that if you went into education, it's because you absolutely love and care for kids, and you went to school to be an educator, so you get to work with kids. And we know that, and they know that. And who doesn't know that is the kids. So we spend a lot of time really talking about the importance of caring out loud, and of really showing students through our words and through our routines how much we care about them. And that we believe really is foundational and crucial for building those strong relationships for learning with our students. Additionally, what that helps create when we really share with students how much we care about them, that helps us build really trusting environments. And what we know is that learning is super risky. To learn something new means that we have to make mistakes. That means we have to ask questions. That means we have to raise our hand and say, I don't quite get it. And that's a risky thing. And as adults, I think that we sometimes take for granted how risky that is for students, because our job is, we teach and they learn. And when we think ourselves back on the time, if we really think about when was the last time I learned something new, not just a new piece of information, but a new skill that really required me to, make mistakes and ask questions and not get it right. And I mean, personally, I don't like doing that. I really like being good at things that I'm doing. So it's hard for me. It's been rather humbling when I've learned new skills as an adult. And this is something I think as adults we take for granted because we don't experience it that frequently. So we really, really have to remember how hard it is, how risky it is for students to take that real risk to learn. And if they don't trust us, they are not going to learn from us. Additionally, not only are we asking them to do all of those things, with us, we're asking them to do that with 30 other sets of eyes watching them. So we're asking them to learn publicly. So that experience, I've given a little bit of background here because what you just described, I think is so common for kids. Like they're coming in, they're feeling nervous or uncomfortable or just like, I'm looking around. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. I'm just checking in. And now my teacher thinks that I'm cheating or that I'm taking work from someone else. So, in that situation, I think what I'd really want to talk to is the teacher, and just ask them really clearly, like, I wonder how that felt for the student. I wonder what was going on for the student in that environment. I'm wondering how that question that you asked rather publicly landed for the child, and really just help them go to this place of inquiry. Because I think as educators, no one is setting out to ruin a kid's day or to really say something that's going to really negatively impact them. And yet we do sometimes. And Eric and I are all about, like, we're not going to do blame or shame, but we are going to ask people to really think and reflect and really think about, what are some little minor tweaks that I could do to help this situation? So what I would recommend, like if that teacher could go back in time, go check in, go stand over by the student's desk, squat down, say quietly, hey, what's going on? Do you need help getting started? What's up for you? Just doing a check-in, and then that provides the student an opportunity to actually have a conversation. I don't know a kid that if the teacher said that out loud in front of the whole class, so now everyone is hearing, the student is already nervous, who's going to say, no, I was just looking around because I didn't know what to do. Like that kid is probably not going to say anything. And the teacher is probably going to take their silence as you were cheating, stop cheating.
Right. Exactly. There's a lot there that you just said. So I just want to kind of unpack that and restate a little bit of what you're saying. And I think to stay in a place of inquiry is a really great way of being in that moment. And also what you're saying is maybe 10 steps behind that, right? Before that moment, spending more time talking to the class explicitly about how you care and showing how you care and making those relationships happen, establishing the rapport can help you to have those conversations when there's a more vulnerable moment. And it sounds also like when you, as a teacher, maybe there's an awareness built also around the vulnerability that students are in when they're learning, so that teachers can understand a little bit more of the reasons why they might be looking to the left or looking to the right. It's sort of goes back to an anchoring statement that I learned, I'm sure you know too, which is, children prefer to do well, and, if they can do, they do. And I think that is something else we can all come back to. There's also, I think, a moment there when I was telling that story where I recognized, and I've been in this position before as a teacher, as a human, as a person in a relationship where there's a trigger, and you talk about it in the book too. You talked a little bit about power struggles and in the classroom, and there are power struggles. There's even power struggles between a student and a teacher where the student is trying to hold power and the teacher, or vice versa. And these are really tricky moments, and it's sort of, comes into some of the complications that I think happen in the classroom setting where, let's say a teacher is tasked to order the classroom and everyone has to be ordered to learn so that we're not all talking at the same time, or we're not all getting distracted. And then a child is distracting, and there has to be a communication about that. And there are very tricky scenarios that come up for people in relationships, right? And I want to stop there because I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about those real power struggles, and how do the strategies that you teach kind of help teachers and students in those kinds of situations that will 100% come up no matter what, what kind of connection we all establish, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you are guaranteed to face this moment in schools for sure, but also, as you said, just in relationship. And what we know is that as an adult, when we're in a situation where there's starting to be a power struggle happening, as soon as we engage in that struggle, we have lost. There's no way to win a power struggle with a student. We're not in it to be in competition or to try and win. And so we really think about it as, they're trying to play a game of tug of war with us, and we don't pick up the rope. We're not going to engage. And that's really easy to say and very challenging to do. So one of the things that, we have a number of strategies that we talk about, and I'd love to share just a couple. I think the first one that springs to mind is the idea of not asking a question if it's not a choice. So oftentimes as grown-ups and educators, we are super polite. We tend to say please in front of every thing that we say. And so when, for example, with a younger child who needs to go to bed, saying something like, "Oh, do you want to go to bed now?" You're guaranteed to get a no answer, right? I have not met a 3-year-old who's like, "Yes, please, I would love to go to bed now." Or, "Oh, do you feel like brushing your teeth?" "Nope, I sure don't." So when we ask a question, we are inviting a response that could be yes or no, because that is a fair assumption for a child or anyone if you're asking a question to be able to give an answer. And so instead, we really want to state expectations as expectations. So instead of, "Do you feel like going to bed now?" "Oh, it's bedtime. Let's head on up." Or, "It's time to brush our teeth. Let's go get started." At school, it's, we walk in the hall. "You can all take a seat now." And it's so easy to instead say, "Oh, could you all please take a seat?" And yet that subtle shift in language makes a significant difference, right? The other thing we tend to do is change a statement into a question. So for example, "It's time to line up." "Okay." And all of a sudden we've taken an expectation and we've turned it into a question. And again, it just invites a no response. And that's legitimate. If we're asking a question, of course they should be able to say no, thank you. So that's one strategy. Tiffany, I don't know if you want to share another.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what we know about students when they're engaging in a power struggle is that for the most part, they're looking for control. They are looking to control their environment. They're looking to control themselves. They're looking to just exert control in a way that feels a little bit safer to them. And so it's a helpful mind frame for us to remember. But what we want to think about, just like Erika said, when we're not asking questions if they aren't choices, if we do have an opportunity to give students choices, let's do that. So we're going to, let's use that same example of "it's time to go to bed," right? And so what we might say is, "Oh, it's bedtime. Do you want to get a piggyback ride, or do you think you can walk by yourself?" And so now I've shifted it from whether or not you're going to bed to how we're getting there, because going to bed isn't an option, but how we get there is, and that one obviously wouldn't work for school, but we might say something, to student, like let's say we have a student that doesn't want to come in off the playground, well, it's time to, "Oh, the bell rang. It's time to come in. Do you want to walk by yourself, or would you like to hold my hand?" This could also be for older students or older kids. Kids don't always love to do homework. And it's often, it can be a real battle for parents and caregivers. That's not always a fun thing. So it's not an option whether or not you do your homework, but we can decide on when, we can decide on how. So you might say, "Oh yeah, it's time to do homework. Do you want to knock that out now, or would it be better if you did it after dinner?" Just what you're doing when you're providing those two options, and they both have to be options that work for you. But what you're doing is, first of all, you're shifting the focus from the thing that's a non-negotiable to something that is negotiable. But you're also giving them a bit of control. So they feel that real sense of agency, and they get that control that they're looking for, but not in the place that would be challenging for us.
I love those. I love that I say sometimes this is what's non-negotiable and this is what's negotiable. That way everyone understands where I'm lying.
Yep.
Clarity. Clear is kind in that regard,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's, something I've learned too in my practice of doing all of this work that you're talking about is that there are infinite number of redos possible. So if you ever get into a situation where you are having one of these conversations and you realize like, oh, wait, I'm in it. I'm really in the power struggle. Like, Erika said, you could just drop the rope and say, you know what? This isn't working. Let me redo this. What I should have said is the statement, right? I should have said, it's time to leave the playground. Would you like to walk with your friend or would you like to walk alone? Let me just redo that. And in those moments, we're being learners ourselves, which I think is just also such a wonderful opportunity and model for kids to see us also redoing and navigating a new skill that we're working on. So I think that's an invitation I can provide everybody listening to as you're sharing these really great strategies. Let's talk, I guess, a little bit about, you do talk about culture and you talk about, there are different backgrounds of families, of schools really house so many different types of students, both with neurodiversity, with culture. What's important to one family isn't important to the next family. How does the book address this? And what are some of your thoughts on how to create skill within dealing with that fact?
Yeah, well, I think there's this mindset first that what makes us special and rich as a culture, as a classroom community, as a school, is all of the various amazing and unique things about each individual person in the space. And so celebrating those. But we talk in the book quite a bit about the importance of treating every single human with dignity. And we're really specific about talking about dignity as opposed to respect. Not that respect isn't absolutely important and also something we need to do, but respect is an earned thing. Dignity is something that every single human gets just because they're human. And so that's a lot of kind of simple things that are more complex as you get into it. We want to make sure that we're learning everybody's name and that we're pronouncing everybody's name correctly and that we're addressing them in the way that they want to be addressed, right? That's kind of a baseline piece. The next phase is to really get to know and understand our students and their context. So leading with a lot of curiosity. We talk about asking a lot of questions. We talk about the fact that small talk isn't small. Those opportunities to have conversation, be in conversation with students and their families and caregivers that are really low stakes, that are really just learning about them, who lives in your house and what's your favorite music and what, just those different things that will allow us to really help the student feel seen and heard and known within the space make a tremendous amount of difference. And so getting to know our students is the main thing. And then also making sure that we're using that information to create an environment that's celebrating all of the gifts that they're bringing and bringing what they've shared with us back around. So, when we're able to on a student's birthday, show up with a sticker that's their favorite superhero because we had that conversation and we know all about it. Or we're playing songs during quiet time where we have some music on in the background that every student has identified as their favorite song that's work appropriate. So having that class playlist that can be on in the background and kids can go, oh, that's my song. That's the song that helps me feel seen here. So those are some small and basic things that everyone can do. And then it's just showing up in space, leading with curiosity, and then celebrating those differences. One of those things we have to model. Most kindergartners come into school with this, they show up as their whole self. They're so excited to be there and they're bringing every single special and amazing thing about them to the space. And what tends to happen as kids get older is there's this drive to kind of fit in and look like everyone else. And so we've learned a lot of lessons about that. And we want to be modeling for kids and celebrating for kids all the way through that fitting in isn't the goal. Belonging is the goal. And so, Tiffany, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Brene Brown really says that belonging is the opposite of fitting in, which I love that frame of really thinking about it. And it really is just this idea that we want to create environments where our students really feel this deep sense of belonging. And in order to feel that belonging, we have to really acknowledge their identity, like Erika was talking about, and that affirms their dignity. And what we're doing when we do that is we're creating spaces where students don't have to work so hard to fit in. Right? When I'm fitting in, I'm masking parts of myself, I'm leaving parts of myself out, I'm pretending to be a little different than who I really am because I want to be accepted. And I'm doing air quotes right now. Like I want to be accepted by the people around me, but they're really not accepting me for who I am. They're seeing this version of me that I feel safe enough maybe to present. And what we want to do is create these environments where students really feel that deep sense of belonging. So they get to show up with their whole self. They get to really be who they are. And what we know is that when students feel that deep sense of belonging, there is so much weight that they can let go of just by entering school, right? It's a lot of emotional baggage to be someone different, to act different, to be different than who you really are. Those are students that aren't maybe as comfortable asking questions, making mistakes, looking, like they don't know something in front of their peers. Those are also students who might decide to do things differently to fit in. Like behaviorally, they might start teasing other kids or doing some bullying type behaviors. They might start experimenting with drugs and alcohol. And those are ways, like when we think about belonging in, academics, we also want to think about it behaviorally. Like what are they doing that maybe they're making some behavioral choices that aren't really in alignment with their values, but they feel like I need to do this thing so I can fit in and so I can be included. And we want to create environments where students don't feel that way. Can I add just one piece too about what Erika was saying about connecting with our students and learning about them? That really also applies to their families. And so I think so many times in school, we'll have a meeting or we'll sit down with caregivers and we'll refer to the mom as Johnny's mom in the meeting, right? And Johnny's mom has a name. So let's go ahead and use that name so we can extend some of that belonging to her as well. I have two teenagers, but I was with my daughter in a virtual doctor appointment the other day, and the doctor referred to me by my name, which is, I feel like, not really common. It almost caught me off guard a minute because I was like, oh, yes, I am Tiffany. And we talk about this all the time, but I experienced it, just the other day differently. And I was like, oh, that made a difference for me. Like I all of a sudden felt a little bit more included in this meeting. I felt like you cared about me. I felt like we were in more of a relationship. And it was a vulnerable time. So it was really helpful for me. It really reaffirmed being on the other end of that.
Oh, I love that. I really learned a lot in what you just said. I think it's such an important anchor for work that educators, parents, everyone does, which is to think about ways in which we're providing dignity and think about ways in which we're providing opportunities for belonging and really just giving some of the tools that you just talked about in terms of sharing people's names and talking about their families in their names and what their values are and being appreciative of what they're bringing into the community that is themselves. I think, Erika, what you said was so interesting to me. And I have a follow-up question about what you said about kindergartners coming in with their full selves. They're sort of uninhibited, right, as a child. And I guess what I'm wondering is when children come in who are older, what are some of the strategies that you can use to help them to reconnect with themselves and be more vulnerable in terms of establishing who they are to cause them to have a sense of belonging as opposed to fitting in? What are some of those strategies that we can try on?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it is modeling. So really pointing out, oh my gosh, this is a really unique thing. And that is so cool. I'm so excited that you're bringing that to the space and celebrating it. Oftentimes that has to be in one-on-one conversations at first, because it can be uncomfortable for students to celebrate things that are unique about them in front of others, especially as they get older. And it's also about getting to know and setting up spaces of safety within the environment. So, in the example you gave in the very beginning about a student who wasn't sure what to do, right? So we knew that was a student who didn't feel comfortable enough yet in the space to raise their hand and ask, like, I don't know what's going on. Can you help me? And certainly that's what the teacher was wanting, right? She wants the student to ask a question when she doesn't know. So it is about setting up environments of trust, both within the relationship between the student and the educator, but also amongst the students. And so it is setting up an environment where certain things are just never going to be tolerated. We're never going to allow harassment to take place in this space. And if I see it, if I hear about it, I'm going to intervene and I'm going to make sure it stops. Bullying behavior is not going to happen in this space. And if I hear about it, if I see it, I'm going to make it stop. So just some of those basic safety things that have to be in place in a classroom are so critical, because that's what starts to kind of push that out of students, is when they start getting negative reinforcement from their peers or from oftentimes adults about things that are different about them. Like when they start getting teased on the playground, when teachers start giving them a hard time because of how they're responding to the schoolwork. I spent, most of my career supporting students in special education, and the gifts that students bring with different exceptionalities are immense, and there's always something that should be celebrated. And the way that they learn is unique and special. It's not bad or wrong. We just haven't built our school system in the way that responds to that. And so thinking about helping to identify, point those out to kids, because they don't know that this is a thing that is really special and incredible about them. They're getting all of this feedback about, like, I can't get this worksheet done, or I'm not understanding what's being shared with me, or communicating is really hard, and so I'm not sure how to engage in that. And they have such incredible gifts about how they approach new learning. And so pointing those out, celebrating those, being explicit, and then modeling that both in one-on-one conversations and then in ways that are safe and appropriate in larger group contexts, so that students can start to see that's what we value. And absolutely intervening immediately when we see things that are going to disrupt a sense of safety and belonging in a classroom or in a school.
Thank you. I learned a lot in what you just said too. I feel like that's really helpful. And I think, again, just going off of what I said before, which is we can have so many different restarts. So if you feel like anything Erika just shared is going on, it's always an invitation to try one of these strategies to see if you can connect with a child and help them to belong and help them to have that dignity that we know will serve them for their lifelong learning journey. I want to switch gears just slightly for us to dig a little bit deeper into some trauma-informed practices that your book does cover. How do you help educators connect with students who've been through particularly hard stuff?
Yeah, I think it's really this idea that we really need to show up and listen to our students. And I just became familiar with this new term, or with a new to me term. It's called becoming a student of my students, which I just love. It's just like, how do I learn more about my students? How do I really, like you said earlier, Mary, how do I be in this place of inquiry? How do I really be curious about my students? And I think that starts with listening. As educators, as adults, we're used to doing a lot of talking. We've got information to share, they're learning. And so we're going to think about what we're going to say, because what we're saying is how they're learning. But in fact, when they're talking, they're probably doing more learning. And so we want to create environments where we're asking questions, we're remaining in this place of inquiry, we're being really curious so that we can learn more about our students. When we're in it, we call it, again, these connected relationships for learning. But when we're having these connected conversations, these deep, meaningful, authentic, genuine conversations, the adult should be doing the least amount of talking. We want to be asking some questions. We might want to prepare a little bit beforehand. Eric and I have a whole thing on kind of preparing for the conversation and thinking of really clear things to go through to make sure that it can be more powerful. But really, it's setting up a space and an environment and thinking of the questions to ask a student where we're really in this place of perspective getting, right? Like we're learning about what's going on for them. We're asking them questions. We're hearing about them. And I think for so many of our students, especially our students that are coming in that have experienced trauma, and it seems that that's becoming more and more of our students that really do have trauma in their backgrounds, we have to be really, hanging out in this place of care, like we were talking about earlier, that idea of caring out loud, and then caring enough about them to learn about who they are, what makes them them, and then really just being comfortable asking students, what can I do to help you learn? We don't just have to have an IEP plan or a 504 plan to make different accommodations for students. We do not. If we know from students that it would help them to sit in the back, it would help them if we don't always call on them first, if we wait until they raise their hand. Like there are things that we can do to help students feel safer, and just being in dialogue with them and asking them, what can I do to help you feel more comfortable in this situation? And they might not know right away. And that's okay, but that doesn't mean, just like you said, that doesn't mean that's the end conversation, right? We can gut in back in that conversation later, or we can say, hey, I noticed the other day, this thing, it seemed like that really worked for you. What do you notice about that? Did it? Okay, great. I'm going to do that again. And I love this idea of becoming a student of our students.
Becoming a student of our students. Oh, I love that. I do love that. So I'm sure, Erica, you have something to add, but I want to just jump in because it's such a hot topic. How do we think about this with AI coming in as an idea that will be influencing the way our students are learning? I wonder if you have any sort of brief thoughts about that, or I just imagine it being so important to have humans be with humans, but there are many models that are coming out in which parents are choosing otherwise in terms of teaching the students the basic skills through AI-led generated instruction, things like this that are coming up.
Yeah. So Tiffany, I think, has a lot to say about that, but I will just start by sharing. We heard someone say very recently that, teachers will be replaced by AI within 10 years. And that is, to me, a crazy idea, not because the facts can't be outsourced or the, kind of practice can't be outsourced or the finding of information can't be outsourced, but you can never replace connection through something that doesn't exist. And learning doesn't take place without connection. And so I think for us, we say the very heart of education is connection. I believe that to be true at my very core. And so AI can be a powerful tool. It can really help to streamline things for teachers and for students, and certainly for caregivers who are supporting students with their learning. And it's not a replacement for the connection that needs to exist in order for students to learn. I think about the difference between, a parent reading to their child at night versus having the child listen to an audiobook. They're hearing the same book. It's the same, same vocabulary, same language. And it's not the same thing as actually reading with your child. And so there's that substantive difference between what the child is going to take away and the impact that is going to have. I don't think you can outsource connection to AI, and I don't believe that education can exist without it. So that's my 2 cents on AI. I don't know, Tiffany, if you have anything to add to that.
I think you did a great job. It's Bill Gates that said that, actually. Bill Gates
yeah.
would be replaced in 10 years by AI. And I think you're absolutely right, Erica. I think it really is all about connection. And I think AI is really powerful. I have become I was so terrified that robots were going to take over the world that I was just like, I'm not, and I maybe still am, but I've decided that me deciding to not use ChatGPT isn't going to solve that problem. So I'm using it. I'm using it in my classroom and in my teaching, and I'm helping talk to students about how to use that in an ethical way, in a way that actually can support their learning, but not hinder their learning. It still allows for them to do their own creative thinking and creative problem solving and really think critically about things. But what we have the opportunity to do in schools is not just create connection between ourselves as educators and our students, but with each other. We have this real opportunity to have students to create connection with one another. And, the idea of creating these environments that are really safe and trusting, where students are listened to, where they're treated with dignity, where they feel safe and trusted, and they know that they're cared for, well, that is going to allow us to be able to show students how we can engage in dialogue with one another. That's a skill that I think we're going to always, I hope we will always need to have. How do we communicate with one another in a way that is, we can respectfully disagree, that we can share and be open to other perspectives, that we can enter a conversation wanting to hear other perspectives and perhaps change our own minds and change our perspective about something that we were thinking about. When I was growing up, I really was taught that we don't talk about religion and we don't talk about politics. And I don't think that served us. I really don't. I think that what we need to do is create environments for students to have conversations to where they don't necessarily disagree, but they know how to do that. And they know how to move through that discourse. Because at school, we are not just teaching reading, writing, problem solving. We're also teaching students how to share space and how to be in community with one another. And we have I'm going to say we have an obligation to help model for students the way we want them to communicate with one another. And that's not necessarily being modeled on a national stage, but we have this phenomenal opportunity to every day in communication with our students, show them, here's how we can talk with one another. Here's how I'm going to treat you. Here's how I'm expecting that you treat me. And AI can't do that.
Yeah. And I want to go back really quickly to the example of reading with your child, right? That doesn't mean an audiobook isn't a great tool to read with your child. It's that you're in space together. Maybe you're both listening to the book together. You're pausing, you're having conversations about it. Using that technology is still a phenomenal tool. There's nothing that says it has to be your voice who's saying the words. It's about the time and being in space together and not being like, okay, you're going to go listen to your audiobook on your own, and I'm going to go over here and do the other thing. So I wanted to just clarify that difference because
that.
It's a tool. It's a huge benefit. As a parent who's tired, I would read to my kid and I would get tired. And sometimes I'm like, you know what, let's listen to this. And then we would pause and we would still be in conversation with each other. And so using it as a tool and recognizing that connection still has to be at the heart of the exchange.
I love that you added that in. Thank you. And I do think it does sort of also perhaps give parents listening and educators listening an idea, which is to use tools to do things that you need to do. Maybe we can also learn how to be better connectors because we'll be freed up from some of the other things. I mean, I was sort of talking with my sisters who are all moms, and I said, what would be great is if AI did my laundry and, did the floors and then made sure the kids had their stuff scheduled from school. And I could just hug them and, tell them I love them and ask them what their favorite ice cream flavor is for this week. I mean, I think there's so much we could be doing in that space that we could be freed up, in a lot of ways. So I think this is a very exciting opportunity for us. Well, I feel like we could talk for hours. I really do. But with our busy schedules, I know we're going to have to wrap this up. And I do hope everyone listening really has gotten to really experience the value of this material. And I hope that you do pick up the book. I hope that you do go back and engage with Erika and Tiffany to learn more about their work and how they might further your learning within this topic. So I want to give both Erika and Tiffany an opportunity to share where can we find you, and you don't have to do the whole website letters and everything. We'll put that in the show notes, but just where can we find you? What kinds of exciting things do you have coming up that you want the audience to know? When this is coming out, it will be early July. Everyone will be in the summer, but I'm sure people will be picking this up at various points in the year to come as well. So, feel free just to share some of those insights with us, please.
Yeah, so the best place to find us is absolutely on our website. It's connectingthroughconversation.com. So thanks for throwing that in the show notes. We have a bunch going on as we're going into the fall. So this is a great time for folks. Many schools and districts are doing book study packages. And so we have both a free downloadable study guide that folks can use alongside the book if they're studying it together. We also love to come out and support districts with those book studies, and we do some great book study launches, all kinds of different things. And we also just recently released a online course that might be in a more accessible way for some folks to get a hold of the information, either as an individual or a school. Tiffany, do you want to chat about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, released on Valentine's Day, which is so fun for me. But it's just this online course that's all recorded. And so folks can watch it on their own time. It's 5 to 15-minute lessons. There's 2 hours total. Just a bunch of really practical strategies. Like here, we love a little bit of theory and so now what? How do I apply this? What can I do? We like to say that you'll learn it today and you'll use it tomorrow. But then oftentimes when we present, folks will say, they'll go back to work the next day, but we'll get an email that night that's like, I tried this tonight at home with my kid and it worked. So, okay, it's going to work on my students. But yeah, if your listeners, Mary, are interested in doing that course, we're offering a $50 discount code for them. So if they just type in CTC podcast, they'll get $50 off that course. And yeah, we love working with districts. We love connecting with folks. And our book is really easy and fast to read.
Yes.
So it is, I'm going to call it's an easy beach read.
I agree. I did also feel the same. So I do my own writing as well. And I'm a short form reference writer as well. I feel it's just a fun way to get information that's valuable out there. And I love the practical piece. I love learn it today, use it tomorrow. Those are my favorite things to do. And you've taught us so much today. I'm excited to just take some of these things that I've learned actually and throw them right into place with my practice and also with my kids. So thank you so much for being here today. And again, everyone listening, just please know we'll throw so many resources down in the show notes. You can find us at evolvededucationcompany.com, and we'll make sure to put the transcript there for anyone who needs it as well. And we're so excited again to have you here today. Thank you for sharing your work and ideas and connection with us too. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate it.
We hope you found this episode of Be Evolved helpful. If you did, please be sure to like, review, and subscribe. It really helps us to reach more listeners like you. Want to dive deeper into specific strategies? Join me on Supercast as a subscriber. For just $5 a month, you'll get access to my private weekly feed where I share exclusive ideas and answer audience questions about learning and admissions. Have a question or comment? I'd love to hear from you. You can reach out anytime at admin@evolveded.com. That's ADMIN at EVOLVEDED.com. And don't forget, you can find the full transcript for today's episode, along with our terms, conditions, and disclaimers and privacy policies at evolvededucationcompany.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, learn well, live well, and be evolved.